Hello everybody, Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions, LLC. Welcome to On the 250 River with Dr. Dan. It's our top 5 for the week ending yesterday, October 9th, 1775. 250 years ago, we're going to look at the top 5 real stories, real people, real events from that moment on the road to American founding, so you can have a little better insight into the reality of what that was and is and always will be. Let's thank our sponsor for episode 46, which is Ike Harris, or who is Ike Harris? No, that's not a Jeopardy question. Ike Harris is our sponsor for episode 46 from 250 years ago. He is a gun maker in Annapolis, Maryland, and he's issuing a call. Anybody, and I mean anybody, that knows how to make any part of a gun, get to him as fast as you can in Annapolis, Maryland. He's interested in paying you to be part of an enterprise he's putting together to manufacture guns for the marketplace. Now, you do not have to be an Einstein, a genius, to figure out what's going on with Mr. Harris's instincts. He sees an environment, a climate, a market for guns, for weapons. 250 years ago. This ad has been in the newspaper since late August, which tells you something about Mr. Harris's kind of perceptions of what's around him, and there's no two ways around it that this demand has only increased since the first appearance of the ad back in late August. So get to Mr. Harris, downtown Annapolis, Maryland, 250 years ago today, if you know anything about making any part of a gun. Thanks to him. Let's do 250 River top 5. We're going to go a little heavier on the leadership today as we do our 250. My big idea will move off of that just a bit into something that I think will be useful for you as you head into 2026 and the more full-blown, full-on 250th type of celebrations and recognitions that we're going to be seeing next year. So we'll get to that in the What's the Big Idea, Dan segment. But let's start with our beleaguered graphic department, number 5. Looking a little beat up, isn't it? I'll have to have a conversation with them. So item number 5 on our, as we count up and down to the number 1 slot. This is a quote, and I want to read it slowly. It's from a buddy of Benjamin Franklin's who lives in London, England. He inserted the quote, his own words, into a letter that he wrote 250 years ago this week to send to Franklin. I don't know that it's a bon voyage letter or a kind of a see you around someday letter between two friends who are on opposite sides of a deep political dispute. But it feels that way. So William Strachan is his name. And here is the quote. I'll go slow. It's short. I own that I never thought of seeing what I now see, or that things would come to this pass. End quote. Let me repeat it. I own that I never thought I would. Let me back up, sorry. I own that I never thought of seeing what I now see, or that things would come to this pass. End quote. He couldn't imagine in his wildest dreams, in his worst nightmares, in his best whatevers, that what's true now would be true. So I wonder, this is an example of just a powerful, ringing example of somebody capturing in just a few words, a tweet really, the nature of the world around them. And it's a surprising nature, it's a shocking nature and world around them. Have you been, from a leadership perspective, you may feel that way one way or the other. Now, you can fit that positively or negatively today. So what's a leader do when that statement is so true? How does a leader approach the next day, the next week, the next quarter and year? What does a leader do? I think that you and I would be completely safe in saying, and in complete agreement in saying, It can't be business as usual. The leader, he or she, cannot approach everything as if it's the same as always. The quote itself points to the opposite of that fact, and I think that the leader's outlook has to take that opposite into account, that opposite reality that had been expected has to be taken into account. So that's number 5. We could stop there, and I think it'd be time well spent. But we're going to go on to number 4 in our beat up graphic of the top 5. This is number 4 coming in. John Adams, 250 years ago this week. So we've got Strachan writing to Franklin from London. Now we've got John Adams saying that this is to himself. It's a bit of an internal kind of thought, a sharing of his internal outlook. I knew it was coming. I'm boiling it down. I knew this whole situation was coming. I've been thinking about it for years. I knew the break would come between the colonies and Great Britain. I knew it would happen. So you have Strachan saying, "Gosh, can you imagine look at what's I would have imagined it, never imagined it," and Adams is saying, "Oh, I absolutely imagined it." But then he goes on to say something else. So what it is, according to Adams, is that we are going to we're going to do everything we can. I will do everything I can. I'll lose my property, I'll lose my life, whatever it takes, in order for us to have our free constitution as a people. That's his phrase, free constitution as a people. He said, I'll never consent otherwise. I'll never consent to not doing that. I'm talking about climate and the environment around you. In 1855, Abraham Lincoln will wonder about, because enslavement has exploded back onto the national scene as a bitter issue, and it's causing Lincoln to rethink his outlook and maybe join a brand new party called the Republican Party. And he takes a deep dive into the founding documents, Declaration, Constitution, key speeches from the era. Takes a deep dive, and out of it, Lincoln says, I found the one thing that is utterly vital. We're talking the quark, the protein, the atom, the cell of what we are, and that is consent. You consent to somebody else representing you. You consent to giving this or that or the other thing that's in your possession. It all starts with consent. And isn't it interesting that that's the word that Adams is using here in 1775. He picks it up, by the way, from John Locke in 1689 and from other political philosophers too. I don't want to get bogged into that, but I just want you to think about there's an idea that's been brought forward from 100 years ago. There's an idea that's going to be passed on to almost 100 years later. We have John Adams referencing that word of consent. Let's move to number 3. Top 5, number 3. Oh, a guy you've never heard of. His name is Nathan Lockwood. And Nathan is a member of the 4th New York Regiment that's been formed as part of the new Continental Army. We've talked about this before in a few of these podcasts since the summer of 250 years ago. The problem is that Nathan Lockwood is not getting paid. You open up his wallet, it's empty. You have him turn out his pockets, there's nothing in them. He and the rest of his mates, his buddies, his colleagues in the 4th New York haven't gotten paid a nickel, a penny, or whatever the equivalent is that they're owed as soldiers. And by the way, the commanding officer is begging for money. I have no idea where it's going to come from. He writes to people, I need money to pay these guys. Here's the leadership question for this, which is how long can you go as a leader without addressing the basic needs of your followers? How far are we going to push the Nathan Lockwoods of the world before we give them the money that we said they'd earn? How long can you expect them to hold out? So we've got this really important idea from the prior thing with John Adams' consent, and now we've got Nathan Lockwood. Where's my pay? It's not a day late or a week late. It's late. Where's my pay? It's non-existent late. How long can you go? We'll move on. Important question. Again, several of these we could hang out on, right? We're going to number 2, and boy, we're getting into the big wood here on this. John Quamino, Quamino, John Quamino. John Quamino is meeting today, 250 years ago, as he normally does, every few days, once a week, whatever the case may be. It's a regular thing. John is meeting with the college president of the College of New Jersey. We now call it Princeton. The college president is John Witherspoon. They're meeting so that John can continue his studies in 2 specific areas with the college president as his professor, tutor, mentor, friend, and almost kind of father figure, all rolled into one. Number 1, we're continuing to learn the really deep theology in Christianity. We're not just talking about surface stuff. We're going down into the text, into the content, into the spirit, all of it. You are a theologian, John. President John says to student John, and we're going to keep working the theology in this for you, because you're going to go out and you're going to help tell people the good news, as it's called. So that's one thing for the weekly meeting. The second thing is that John is continuing to sharpen his English. It's not his native language. He's from Ghana in Africa. He's black. He was enslaved, but he won the lottery, by God. He won the lottery in Jersey, or where? No, it wasn't in Jersey. It was in Boston, sorry. Won the lottery, and he used that money to buy his own freedom, and here he is, and my gosh, what a story. I'm with the college president, right? Cool. So that's what John's doing today, 250 years ago. That's number 2, but number 1. Still with the big wood. Number 1 is, it's been the worst week of the American cause, of the colonial rights cause. It's been the worst week since the very first moment we could say that it began. It's been the worst week. Because Dr. Benjamin Church, a very prominent Massachusetts colonial rights advocate and leader and spokesperson and thinker and activist and all those things, he's confessed that he's basically been a liar all along. He's been a deceiver. He's been a spy, passing on information to the British and to the enemy day after day, week after week, for months. And he's now confessed. Huge kick in the teeth, punch in the gut, knife in the back to the colonial cause, to the American cause. People like John Adams talking about consent, Nathan Lockwood, who's waiting for his money, and on we go. So Benjamin Church is a traitor, and it's now known. And boy, in a situation where virtue has been such an important part of the rallying cry, to have this guy act this way from the top, wow, it's the worst week yet. Here's an interesting little sidebar. Remember I told you John bought his freedom from his enslaver? Well, you know where I'm going. Benjamin Church said, yes, I'll take the lottery money that you're handing to me, and yes, you have your freedom in return. So here we are. Irony of ironies. The enslaved young man John Quamino, is doing great stuff. Doing great stuff. The enslaver, Dr. Ben Church, is a liar, a fraud, and a deceiver. And a disgrace. And that's our top 5 for the week ending October 9th, 1775. What's the big idea, Dan? One other thing, by the way, I know we all talk about, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, values and such, that we value, we value values, if you will. Boy, when you see a key team member, a key leader, demonstrate the exact opposite of that, how do you recover in your own leadership? What do you do with your followers in that moment and in that stretch of moments? An important question. What's the big idea, Dan? I'm going to move on. I'm going a little long on this, so give me just a couple of minutes. I've been saying, so here's one thing. Slavery, enslavement, the enslaved, the enslavers, all of it, huge issue in the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. How do you start to think through that part of it for now and for next year? And I'm going to give you a thought or two along these lines. So as you can see, number 2 and number 1 on our top 5 list drive right at the heart of this. Well, it's not all about heroes, and it's not all about hypocrites. So that's the starting point for me and the big idea. In 1772 through in 73, there was this movement, and I've said this before, so forgive me if you've heard it, but it's important to keep repeating this. There was an anti-slavery movement that started around Newport, Rhode Island, Boston, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Those were the places. Now, there'd been anti-enslavement tracts written here and there prior to 72 and 73, but for some reason, it's in 72 and 73 that this little plant starts to grow. This little tender shoot comes up out of the ground that is anti-enslavement. It's white and it's black. It's a lot of grassroots, no pun intended, since I'm talking about a little shoot of grass. It's a grassroots level enterprise, expressed all the way across on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean with the writing of the lyrics of Amazing Grace by the ex-slave trader. Patrick Henry writes a letter, a slaveholder in Virginia. Patrick Henry will talk about how this is just eating away at him. How can he do this? How can I do this? How can I stop doing this? So in 72 and 73 and early 74, there's this little bitty movement that's starting to take root. At the same time, you have the anti-imperial and the colonial imperial clash just pop up out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere. That's not fair. Out of nowhere. Out of the Boston Tea Party in late 73, and it really just roars into intensity. At the same time, you have this young little sprout of anti-enslavement. So when the colonists who are pro-colonial rights, like John Adams, which we heard, when they start to organize, they get to a point where everybody pretty much agrees that the best way to go forward is if all the colonies are united. So it's got to be continental, hence Continental Congress. It's got to be something up and down the coast from what's now Maine, that was then Massachusetts, all the way down to Georgia and hopefully elsewhere too. But certainly the 13 colonies up and down that stretch have to be continentally aligned. When you make that decision, when that becomes the crux of your strategy, that means that you're picking up that little bitty shoot of grass of the anti-enslavement thing, and you're carrying that south. What was born in the climate of New England and the Delaware Valley has to be carried south into a much different climate. So we had just last week, Edward Rutledge in the Continental Congress in Philadelphia stood up and said, I want all black soldiers removed from the Continental Army. Everybody who's black, get out. That's what he's saying. There's an immediate divide between North and South, and in that moment, the southern side or the northern side wins, and Rutledge's proposal is put on the table, shoved aside. And here we are. And by the way, and so there's a guy named Salem Poor, black, who, from what everybody says, 12 different officers attest to his bravery, his unusual heroism during the Battle of Bunker Hill, specifically in the town of Charlestown next door. He's recognized, celebrated in Massachusetts as a black man for his tremendous accomplishment on the battlefield. That sits alongside Rutledge's proposal from last week. So this young plant of anti-enslavement has to move its way south to survive, to thrive, to die, whatever the case may be. But the reality is that's going to have to be decided if we believe that a continental union is the only way to win a free constitution and the rights that we assert, like John Adams does. It's a very complex thing. My point is that it's not going to be all of, not everybody's, it's not all hero, it's not all hypocrite. Life's in between. Some hero, some hypocrite, and a whole big bunch of mix in between that's hard to distinguish. That's what life, I'm going to say, always is. And it's no different with this. No different with enslavement or anti-enslavement 250 years ago. I'm Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions LLC on the 250 River with Dr. Dan. Thanks for watching episode 46. Hopefully you can kick over in a few days and see my Pro Football and America 250 podcast as well. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.